Hey guys, Sid from Sid's Trains here, and today I'm going to be talking about why I think the Lionel LionChief system has completely changed the Lionel line. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Sam from Sam's Gauge Trains and Matt from Matt's Trains for providing me with clips of their LionChief engines, as I personally do not have very many, or actually any, LionChief engines. So I just asked them for a couple clips and they provided me with them, and I'm grateful for that. So go check out their channels and definitely consider subscribing, and I'll leave the links to their channels in the description. So before we get into the topic of why I think LionChief has changed the Lionel line, let's kind of go back before we had LionChief in the Lionel line. Before we had LionChief, Lionel starter sets came with the track, the engine, the cars, and a transformer. That was kind of the basic setup that you got, and that's what a starter set was. If you wanted to get any more complicated or more high tech than that, you had to jump really far in a sense to get the command control ability. You had to use Lionel's TMCC control system from 1995 to around 2006, and then after that came Legacy. So then you had two options, and nowadays you have three options. You have TMCC, you have Legacy, and then in the middle is the Cab 1L. It looks like a Cab 1 or a TMCC remote, but has the features of a Legacy 990 command set with the quilling whistle effect and a couple other features. So it's just a little more simple for people than the whole remote with the screen and all of that, which some people find that kind of intimidating, so they don't want to use it. But that was kind of the Lionel range, and kind of their lineup was starter sets, and then maybe some starter sets with sounds, but then there was no really in between, so to speak, and the only thing you could do to make your engines command control was either buy a command control engine or upgrade them using Train America Studios, or what we have today, which is Electric Railroad. However, Lionel changed that in 2013. They created the Lionel LionChief system. It was an idea, I think, actually created and kind of summarized and hypothesized by Howard Hitchcock, the now president of Lionel. But I think the engineering department took it further and, of course, produced it and brought it to life. And when they brought it to life, it was actually very interesting. LionChief is a system that uses, from my knowledge, Bluetooth with the single remote. In front of you, you see a LionChief remote. It has the scroll wheel at the top, the three buttons, and a switch on the side to turn it on and off. And one of the most notable sets in my mind that is LionChief is the Lionel Polar Express. The Lionel Polar Express is one of the most iconic trains, I guess you could say, of the modern era. It kind of brought Lionel back, and they've made a lot of money and produced a lot of Polar Express products. And they put LionChief in it, of course, because why not? It's a starter set, and you might as well give the engine its own remote that can control it by itself. And see, that's kind of the idea of it. It's a command control system, but just for that single engine. Lionel had actually attempted this kind of idea in the past, but they were never produced. The first one, I believe, was in maybe the early 80s, with this radio control set that was actually like a plastic train set, kind of similar to plastic G-gauge trains. And it was cataloged, and it had this radio control remote, but it was never produced. The next time they tried it was around 1996 with this Alco PA set that had a controller in this catalog, but again, it was never produced. And in my mind, it was never produced because Lionel probably thought that it was just going to cost too much to produce these lower end trains with command control and keep it in the price range. So they didn't do it. But come 2013, they decided we need to do this so we can unify our line, create that kind of in between between a low end starter set and our legacy or TeamCC high end products. Well, even with just the LionChief remote, that wasn't really unifying anything. You couldn't really combine your train still. Sure, you could run a LionChief engine on a command control layout because the 18 volts could be on, and you could run the engine with a remote. But there was no way to kind of connect them. You still, if you had a LionChief set and you wanted to run a legacy train, you still had to buy a legacy engine and the legacy command base. Well, the next step was the universal remote. That kind of linked the LionChief line together. You could have multiple LionChief engines and control them all from one remote. The LionChief universal remote can store up to 3 engines in it, and it has those 3 buttons that store the engine, and you can run them all from the one remote. That was very helpful and kind of unified the LionChief line. Another thing they did was LionChief Plus. It updated the electronics, made the sounds a little nicer, and added some features. It was very nice, and it also allowed them to do separate sale engines that were a little nicer than the ones that were in the sets, like the Polar Express. You could get then a LionChief Plus Berkshire that had better sounds and better control and just overall a better product. The next thing they did that really unified the line was Bluetooth. They added Bluetooth to everything in the line around 2017-ish. They added Bluetooth to the legacy engines, LionChief engines, and the LionChief sets. All of these could be controlled via the LionChief app, which is an app that can be on an iPhone or a tablet or your Android phone. It allows you to control your train via Bluetooth, and I've used it in my Milwaukee Road S3 Northern, and I've used it in a couple other trains. And it unified the line because now, if you had a Bluetooth or LionChief set, you could then buy a legacy engine and just keep using the Bluetooth app that costs nothing at all. So all you have to do is buy an engine, and then you can run it. You can also use the universal remote to control them all, because that remote uses Bluetooth, and that just created this unified line, so to speak. I personally think it's just amazing that Lionel's finally done this. MTH had been doing this for a long time. Ever since they created the Protosound 2 system, all their trains basically came with Protosounds in them, and the Premier line and the Rail King line had the same electronics, and they could all run under the same system. Obviously, there was Loco Sounds, which was a very dumbed down system, and in my opinion, it just wasn't really that good, but their line was very unified. Well, with Lionel creating the Bluetooth and the LionChief remotes and the universal remote and bringing everything together, that really unified things. In my opinion, the final step in that setup was LionChief Plus 2.0. That brought back something Lionel had not produced in a very long time, the TMCC setup. These new LionChief Plus 2.0 engines are not really LionChief engines, they're actually TMCC engines, but they have the ability of Bluetooth control, legacy control by using your legacy or TMCC remote to control them, or of course the Bluetooth app or the universal remote. And it just unifies everything. Now we have, like, I call it 3 or 4 different lines. We have LionChief, LionChief Plus, LionChief Plus 2.0, and then full on legacy. It's this whole line. Lionel now has a full line, and there's no gaps, in my opinion. Sure, MTH products might be a little cheaper. I don't think Lionel's line is very inexpensive like MTH's line with Rail King. By no means have trains ever been cheap, and I don't ever expect Lionel prices to be super cheap. But I think Lionel has really come full circle and made a good attempt and effort at unifying their line. I think they've done a really good job of it. and I'm excited for the future. All of Lionel's trains now have pretty much the same boards inside of them. They just program them differently so that they can get those features they want. If you have a legacy steam engine now and a LionChief steam engine next to each other, you look at those electronics on the inside, they're going to look very similar. The only difference is the programming. That right there is key. Very similar to MTH with their proto-sound system. Very similar to DCC trains from HO and S-Gauge. It's very similar, and I think it's Lionel's attempt and Lionel's effort to change the way they've been producing products. Lionel had this large gap in their product line, and there was no link between their high-end products and their low-end products. And I think they've finally gotten to the point where they have linked it all together and are really bringing things to the next level. Are they totally to that next level yet? I don't think so. Are they going to get to that next level? I think so. The features in the trains are just amazing now. The lights turning on slowly and you hear the dynamos turn on the new legacy engines. 5 whistles and multiple bells. The crew talk sounds a lot better than it used to. And overall, I think Lionel products are improving a lot. Obviously, recently there's been a couple things with the freight cars having bad couplers, and there's always little issues with the electronics that they're producing. But I think Lionel is doing a really good job with their product line, and LionChief has made a very, very big impact on their product line. It might not be the best competitor to MTH Rail King, but it sure has made an impact, and Lionel is headed in the right direction, at least in my opinion. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it, as I've learned a lot about the LionChief line, and I've recently worked on my buddy Sam's LionChief Hudson. So I really hope you enjoyed, and I sure enjoyed it. So that's all I got for this one. As always, like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Comment below, and tell others about the channel. I'm Sid, and I'll see you next time, guys.